The public hearing here represents more than just a legislative requirement. It's a platform for you to dialogue where lawmakers will take notes, where tax administrators will give their inputs, where businessmen and women would give ideas on how to grow businesses and the level of taxation that they think can assist them for their businesses to grow.
The Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration came into office on the 29th of May 2023. As an indication of the direction of the administration, that is, the putting of the Nigerian economy on a sound footing, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, set up a panel on fiscal policy and tax reform on the 7th of July 2023, barely 5 weeks into the administration. The committee, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, was inaugurated a month after, on the 8th of August 2023. Members of the committee include leading lights in taxation, accounting, law, representatives of trade and industry associations, academics, and students. Tax reform in Nigeria has a long history. In 1978, a task force on tax administration headed by Alhaji Shehu Musa was set up by the federal government and achieved, among other things, the introduction of withholding tax into the Nigerian tax system. In 1991, a study group on the Nigerian tax system and administration, headed by Professor Emmanuel Edoziem, was set up to review the tax system and make appropriate recommendations. In 1992, a study group on indirect taxation, headed by Dr. Sylvester Ugo, was set up by the government, and it achieved, among other things, the establishment of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the establishment of the revenue services at the 3 tiers of government, and value-added tax. That was the beginning of value-added tax in Nigeria. In 2002, a study group on the Nigerian tax system was set up under the headship of Professor Dotun Phillips of the Nigerian Institute for Social and Economic Research, NISA. Among other things, the Dr. Phillips study group recommended the centralization of the tax administration system, reduction in tax rate, and the development of a tax policy for Nigeria. The report of the study group, submitted in 2003, contained some other radical shifts in policy. This necessitated the federal government setting up a working committee headed by Mr. Sheyi Bikesset to review the report of the study group. The working group, which concluded their review in March 2004, agreed with some of the suggestions of the study group and disagreed with some of these suggestions. The implementation of the critical changes in the laws and institutions governing taxation and tax administration marked a new era in the history of both the legal and institutional processes of tax administration in Nigeria, bringing into place the modernization and reform practices which had never been attempted in the history of taxation in Nigeria. The reforms include organizational reforms in funding, legislation, taxpayer education, dispute resolution mechanism, taxpayer registration, human capacity building and automation of key processes, refund mechanisms, and several other areas. The reform and modernization program continued at a steady pace, resulting in the passage by the National Assembly of several tax legislations principal, of which was the FIRS Establishment Act 2007, the Companies Income Tax Amendment Act 2007, among others. In 2011, the National Assembly passed the Personal Income Tax Amendment Act 2011. In the year 2021, after almost 2 decades of foot dragging, the National Assembly also passed the Petroleum Industry Act. In a commendable move to keep tax legislation at pace with the demands of modern-day business practices, the Muhammadu Buhari administration, 2015 to 2023, embarked on the yearly issuance of finance acts, which ensure that while ensuring stability in the tax system, needed reforms are encapsulated in legal instruments. The Finance Acts brought desired changes into stamp duty administration, change in the rates of value-added tax and education tax, introduction of electronic money transfer levy, among others. In spite of all these efforts, the fact remains that for 2 decades, 20 years after the empanelling of the Dr. Philip Committee, little effort was made for a holistic reform of the Nigerian tax system. The Tinubu administration came to the rescue. It was with relief that the business community received the news of the setting up of the Taiwo Oyedele Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform by the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. The Taiwo Oyedele Committee moved swiftly into action and submitted its report on the 24th of October 2023. After much needed deliberation, the Federal Executive Council forwarded 4 tax bills drafted by the Oyedele Committee to the National Assembly. As expected in any vibrant political and economic community, the tax reform bills generated heated debate, support and opposition from the polity. In keeping with its procedure, the National Assembly invited the public to public hearings on the 4 tax reform bills as a prelude to other steps that would be taken before the bills can be passed into law. In our next few outings, we are going to take our audience into the hallowed chambers of the red and green chambers of the National Assembly. The red chamber, the Senate, held its own public hearing from Monday, February 24th to Tuesday, February 25th, while the green chamber, the House of Representatives, held its 3-day hearing from Wednesday, February 26th to Friday, February 28th, 2025. We begin at the Senate. The opening ceremony was addressed by the Senate President, His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio.
We are gathering today in a very pivotal moment, one that calls us to think, to reform, and to modernize and optimize our tax system. For me, this is just not a task. Is a profound responsibility. We must embrace with courage, with wisdom, and steadfast commitment to the Nigerian people. The people I'm seeing in this hall are the people who know the procedure of lawmaking. No matter what you do on social media, no matter what you do on television commentaries, no matter how many committees you sit, how many television studios that you visit, you cannot alter even a word in the Nigerian law. This is the place you can alter, you can tinker, you can add or subtract. And this is what we do. This is public hearing. And so today, I'm happy that we are all here. And for those who are not here, I do hope, Chairman, the House of Representatives will also have an arrangement with the 2 Senators, Zangodara. I'm happy also that you are here. I hope you have a continuous arrangement for engagements until we dot the I's and cross the T's to ensure that every person is satisfied that we have met laws for the benefit of all Nigerians and for the upliftment of the Nigerian economy. Harnessing resources for development is not something that you leave to government alone. It is something that every Nigerian child, every Nigerian woman, every Nigerian adult should be interested in. You need to know that the National Assembly, particularly the Senate that I belong and we belong, we are not interested in making laws for ourselves. We want to leave what I may call enduring legacies for the future. And I also believe strongly that President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is quite aware that laws are meant to be obeyed and laws are meant for the good governance of the country. And therefore, in coming up with reforms, is looking at the situation yesterday, is looking at the situation today, and is looking at Nigeria in the future with the way the global trend is going in terms of economic indices and changes. So whenever reforms come, sometimes it might be difficult for you to comprehend, but the best place for you to come and ventilate your thoughts is right here in the National Assembly. So I welcome you. You are in the right place. At the end of what we are doing, it will be easy for you to pay tax. And also, we will now oversight government to make sure that whatever revenue comes into the purse of government is well utilized. If we get this right, it will be reflected in the infrastructure in Nigeria. All we need is to have a country where people will not cry because they don't have water to drink. We want a country where people can see good roads to pass. We want a country where there is security. Security costs money. We want a country where there will be employment opportunities for thousands of youths. We are churning out thousands of graduates, improving the educational sector with more universities and tertiary institutions, and yet we are not creating jobs. Why? Because the monies are not really there. So it should begin to look inwards, because no other country will come and do it for us.
The key objectives of these reforms is to, as the economy grows, so we must arrive at, we must modernize our tax laws, enhance compliance, broaden the tax base, and create an environment that fosters investment and job creation. So the reforms will look to provide equity, efficiency, economic growth, and critically today, we're here to have the feedback from the stakeholders, from the public at large, and that really is the point of this particular two-day sitting, to ensure that all views are heard and all stakeholders are carried along.
From the Chairman Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Mohammed Sani Musa.
The speech from Mr. President is very insightful, and we will be guided in our deliberations, in our processes, with the tenet that integrity and fairness will be part of our guiding principles here. We will make sure every sector of this country is adequately considered, and we will come out with a proposal, because whatever we are going to do, not until when bills are passed, they still remain proposals. So we will also make our own inputs and make sure that the diverse opinions that we get, I will assure Mr. President of the Senate that that is what our recommendations will be.
Opening formalities over, the fireworks began. As is expected, stakeholders from various sectors of the polity raised concerns about provisions of the bills that have impact on their areas of endeavor. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, spoke on provisions relating to the free trade zones.
The FMITI, the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, has engaged key stakeholders, including the Nigeria Economic Zones Association, NASIMA, NEPSA, OXFA, the Federal Ministry of Finance, the FIRS, the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy, and the CBN to ensure alignment with FCZ incentives with our export-focused national economic priorities. The enabling law under NEPSA and the deliberations, the provisions under the Nigerian tax bill, and the contents of its second schedule on the non-accrual of tax reliefs to entities that sell more than 25% of their goods to the customs territory. In summary, we propose on the position of completely withdrawing all reliefs for FCZ enterprises. Only domestic sales exceeding the 25% threshold should be subject to all applicable taxes, including customs duties, levies, and more. Allow 25% duty-free imports into the Nigerian customs territory. Any import above 25% will attract all the full duties. Proof of USD export proceeds from anywhere in the world or duties paid required and imports above 25% mandatory to retain free zone incentives. In brief, Chair, The revised provision of the proposed tax should be simple, transparent, and straightforward, bringing regulatory certainty and a level playing field for everyone. The federal government of Nigeria will now focus on enforcing the compliance mechanism going forward. We note the comments raised by private sector stakeholders regarding the immediacy of the proposed takeoff date and the significant policy and legal changes, including the tax implications for subnationals, the increased input thresholds, and automatic taxation on all FCC companies. I therefore urge all stakeholders to continue to engage on a win-win implementation roadmap that supports our investors and their investments while meeting government objectives. The ministry would also like to tender the position of the Industrial Inspectorate Department regarding the proposed Nigeria tax bill, with a view to incorporating the mandates and operations of the Industrial Inspectorate Department as outlined in the Industrial Inspectorate Act of 2004. Our shared goals remain to create a policy and regulatory environment that supports economic growth while safeguarding investor interests, and we are committed to implementing Mr. President's 8-point agenda and export proceeds in this regard. Thank you very much.
Still on the free trade zones.
We substantially agree with the entire bill. The only area of concern, which is of issue, is the tax rate, first of all. We have objections to the points in the tax bill, especially Section 57, Section 60, Section 198.2, and Section 198.3, Schedule 2, items 3, 4, and 5. These sections completely withdraws the current promise under which our free trade zone is currently predicated. There are about 50 free trade zones in Nigeria. Only 2 belong to the federal government, Calabar and Kano. The other ones were all built by the private sector. Can you imagine Nigeria without Eco-Atlantic? What would have happened to Victoria Island? It was private sector that did it. Or our current energy security provided by the refineries. What they've tried to do is to tie ability to operate in this sector and gain acceptance by only export. The free trade zone is not only for export. There are several economic activities. Is Eco-Atlantic going to export sand to be able to benefit from this? These places have become economic zones. They are not just for export. If Nigeria desires to do export free trade zone only, you can turn the 2 federal government ones to the Calabar and Kano to export zones. These are economic zones, and they have serious macroeconomic effect for these investments. And they are over $200 billion investments, as confirmed by NEPSA, already there. That's about 5 times the size of the current budget, more than the current Nigerian GDP. If you were going to do this kind of law, do you know that this committee only spoke for the first time with this sector only on the 20th of February this year? And you are telling them to change their business and financial model. Within 5 days, you have to pass a law. This is the highest somersault you can ever have of policy and law. So what we are recommending, we are all Nigerians. We appreciate the need for us to pull in one direction and to avoid the litigations that are going to arise from this. Most of these companies have pioneer status already issued by government, and they went to borrow money on it. You are going to withdraw these privileges in 1 week. So I'm saying in nutshell, there is need. All these sections, as they affect the free trade zone, should be stepped down, or they should be given some time to negotiate. People have borrowed money, they've taken the risk, and what is going to happen? They will go to our neighbors.
Mr. Kevin,
yes, sir.
Please just concentrate your comments on your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Exactly what you have presented to us.
So in a nutshell, our recommendation, sir, is that we appreciate the offer made by the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment this morning, that the issue is there is an assumption that people in the free trade zone don't pay any form of tax. That is not true. The only tax they don't pay is income tax. They pay every other type of taxes. And apart from, including paying, They even pay an annual rate of $6,000. I mean $60,000 for every free trade zone. While there's a license fee for application for every enterprise at 1,000. The two Calabar free trade zone, they pay about 65 cents for per square meter.
It's more than 5 minutes, but I'll give you another 1 minute.
So, sir, just in the final analysis, what we are recommending that where there is need to timelessly pass this bill and avoid the mistake we made with the petroleum tax law, where we spent almost 14 years and the investors left, we can, by our own rush to pass this down, also scare away these investors. Our neighbors, any law you tend to make in Nigeria, ask first what is our neighbors offering, so that we can be competitive as a country. If not, you are going to kill this setup. So we advise at least a 10 to 15 years, or at least let us discuss and amend the principal law itself and avoid domesticating our law, trade laws in tax laws. Nobody will come if everything is inside tax. So this is what we are asking, and there is the most fundamental thing about these laws, which is the most dangerous. The subnationals, which were excluded in the old law, are not excluded here. So every state will make law for every free trade zone. It will become a tax zone. So this is our submissions, and we appeal that this should be looked into and be stepped down to allow the investors to keep their investment and avoid litigation. Thank you very much.
I will also recall that during proceedings, when we were having revenue proceedings here, revenue investigation that we did recently, we were able to find out that some of the free zones are not adhering to why they were established. Where a free zone is coming with treated vehicles to this country, and these treated vehicles are being used not at the free zones, but outside the free zones, is inimical to the objectives at which they were set up, because they denied the federal government the needed revenue. So what the representative of NASIMA have done, we are going to call on you back again, engage with Ministry of Justice and FIRS in order to find a way out. We are losing a lot of revenue from free zones. Free zones mainly supposed to be exports. And when they are doing that export or integrating backward integration within Nigeria, those things are not happening. We will include cost of all the stakeholders that has to do with this. With Ministry of Trade, the people that also give the license for free zones, we have a special session for that. So thank you for your presentation.
The CITN raised concerns about a provision in one of the bills purportedly transferring the regulation of the practice of the tax profession from the CITN to the Joint Revenue Board.
As we are all aware, CITN is the only professional body charged by law to regulate taxation and provide professional services in all aspects of taxation in Nigeria. Within the bill, the issue of tax agent was raised, but if it is enacted in the way it is proposed, it may have impact on the charter of the institute. Because as it is in the bill now, the tax agent is to be regulated by the Joint Tax Board.
The issue of tax agents is in line with international best practice, that globally, tax agents are regulated by the tax authorities. I can mention 10 countries that tax authorities regulate the tax agents. 1, Australia, Canada, UK, US, South Africa, India, Singapore, New Zealand, Ireland, then Malaysia. Finally, to say that the tax agents should be regulated by any professional organization in Nigeria is an aberration, and it goes against international practice, international best practice. So what is in the
law is in accordance with international best practice, OECD regulations, and all these countries and many more that I've just quoted. Thank you, sir.
One of the tax reform bills introduces development levy, which shall be imposed on the accessible profits of all companies other than small companies, non-resident companies, and accessible profits for hydrocarbon tax purposes at the following rates. For 2025 and 2026 years of assessment, 4%. For 2027, 2028, and 2029 years of assessment, 3%. And 2030 year of assessment and thereafter, 2%, which shall be solely for the Student Education Loan Fund. Between 2025 and 2030, the revenue accruing from the levy shall be distributed between the TED Fund, Student Education Loan Fund, National Information Technology Development Fund, and National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure. This consolidated rate prioritizes long-term funding for the Student Education Loan Fund. The government's intention is to fund these agencies based on budgetary allocations rather than through levies imposed on companies. The Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN, represented by Mr. Abuja, reacted this way.
In SB 586, Section 59 of it, on the area of development levy, we came to a conclusion that by 2030, that is designed in the bill to wind up TED Fund, appears not to be doing justice to that particular agency. Because over the years, if one has to go to universities today, the visible physical developmental structures, basically in the public universities, were being attended to by this particular agency. If it has worked so excellently well over the period, why wind it up by 2030? So we feel that in our submission, we couch how we feel that the division or separation or distribution of the development fee should go further. Don't wind it down. Now, my lords, students everywhere are like kites. You can determine where they are taking off from. You can guide where they are taking off from. But where they are landing, you may not determine. Now, if you couch and close the issue of TED Fund and parcel out the loans to the students, by the time the students graduate, you may find it difficult to get them. The issue now remains, how do you fund the critical areas in the tertiary education, which TED Fund has been taking care and has been working on? Believe me and note, by the time you remove funding and collapse that area, the students that have their loans and now can go to school to study, when there are no labs, when there are no buildings, when there are no research centers that are now being done by TED Fund, and you have concluded and removed it, they will still march back to the streets, and you have more crises at hand to face.
From the NMPC came this huge endorsement for the work of the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee.
We are NMPC Limited. We are the largest taxpayer in the country today. Our industry contributes to the largest contribution to revenue from taxes, and therefore we are the happiest people seeing this tax law coming in place, bringing every legislation in one basket. And not only that, bringing in a significant number of reforms that will bring simplicity, efficiency, and also transparency to the tax system and the tax laws in our country. And ultimately, making our businesses more predictable, that we can plan with it. Our industry has always struggled around multiple tax systems, multiple tax rules, possible tax books. And today, what this means is that we're seeing a single tax book that we can relate to and we can work with, and we're planning with it. Chairman, I can confirm to you that not just NMPC, the entire oil and gas industry is happy to have this reform that is coming at the right moment today. Perhaps it's very late, but it's good that it has come up. Mr. Chairman, I think this reform is late. I think it's very good that it has come today. We're happy that this is happening in our country, and we believe that this will bring great prosperity to everyone.
And from the RAMFAC,
is 100% in support of the tax reform. We believe that this will enhance stability in the Nigerian economy, free up funds for infrastructure development, increase revenue to subnationals and to the federal government. However, one area that we feel that this committee will address is the area of VAT distribution to subnationals. The Commission was invited to a meeting with Governors Forum and the chairman of the Tax Reform Committee, and they came to an agreement on a new sharing formula. I would like this committee to adopt and listen to the Governors Forum on that. And they also made some few observations, which I believe the committee will look into. So I have to commend the tax reform person and all those people who are advocating for the passage of this bill. With this short submission, I would like to reiterate Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission is in support of the reforms because it will increase revenue to the Federation. And the last observation that the chairman made with NNPC, I also hope that this bill will address the issue of endless reconciliation with NNPC Limited.
still on VAT, the Council of Retired Permanent Secretaries had this to say on the proposal to increase the rate of VAT in Nigeria.
For the record, it is the view of Council of Retired Permanent Secretaries that the crafting of the proposed 4 bills which seek to create improvement in tax administration and governance framework in Nigeria is a commendable step towards creating a more efficient and equitable tax system. I will start with Nigerian Tax Bill 2024, which is SB 586, Part 2, Section 132 and 133, which indicates that 1 million or equivalent to the annual minimum wage may be needed to be reviewed higher because present-day economic reality and depreciation of the naira makes the minimum wage a weak baseline. Also on the proposed tax, the VAT starting from 2025, 10%, 12.5%, and 15%. Our view is that for this first year, we should let it remain unchanged at 7.5%. But from next year, and which is 2026 up to 2029, we should go up to 10%. And then 12.5% from 2030 onwards, thus discarding the 15%. Because the revenue is important, let us look at what is happening in the aid scene. Aid is a palliative. Nobody will give you resources to be able to transform your economy. So you need to generate enough domestic resource mobilization in order to be able to move and transform your economy to the level that you desire. I will go straight to Tax Administration Bill 2024. And in this particular respect, we are also of the view that the development levy be preserved as flat rate of 4%. This is in order to be able to maintain or retain trade funds, NIDA and NASENI, which will have zero inflow if we abide by this proposal. In view of the transformational roles that these agencies have played over the years and are still playing, consideration should be given to retaining them. Eliminating them in the budget in 2030 as proposed will amount to negative shock therapy to the expansion of infrastructural facilities in tertiary institutions.
There is more.
Why we are here also today is to, clarify the perception that the North is against this bill. It's not true. And please, some of these bills that are very beneficial to the country, we should not politicize it. Thank you very much.
There is more to come from the Senate proceedings. Watch out.